The Giants still have a long way to go to upgrade their roster this offseason. The number of premium free agents is dwindling, and that means it's time to start talking trades. Welcome into another edition of the Kerry Show, talking all things Giants baseball. And for so much of this offseason, we've talked about the free agents who might consider or did consider signing with the San Francisco Giants. Now it's time to talk about the players inside the organization who could be on their way out the door this offseason. We've talked about Shohei Ohtani, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the Giants' failed pursuits of the top free agents that landed with the Los Angeles Dodgers. We've talked about a team that signed Jung-Hoo Lee, which is a great first step forward and still must make several upgrades. And when you look at the rest of the free agent market right now, you think about Blake Snell, Cody Bellinger, Matt Chapman, with the Dodgers already taking two of the top players off the board, it is going to make the competition that much more difficult to sign the best players available at this point. So what that means for Farhan Zaidi and the Giants front office is that, yes, it's time to start consider trades, and some that might ultimately backfire on the organization, because you can't get something good without gambling and potentially giving away something good. But with that being said, it's time for the Giants to be aggressive. It's time for them to reconsider the way they're building their roster and reconsider the way they want to be a contender in 2024. And to best do that, to best achieve that goal, I'm of the opinion that you probably have to trade away some prospects to make some major headway and find improvements for your roster, because that is the ultimate goal for the organization, making the playoffs in 2024. And so if the Giants are going to do that, they may have to part with some young talent. So today, I want to talk about the three different types of players who are on the Major League roster right now who could be traded this offseason. And yes, I'm going to get into some names here. So first bucket of young players is the former top prospects who could be dealt because they're no longer viewed as top prospects within the Giants organization or around the game of baseball. Then there's the young position players who made their Major League debuts in 2023, still offer a lot of promise and could be theoretically centerpieces of trade packages if the Giants pair them with the right players on their way out the door. Then there's the young pitchers who will be coveted in the trade market because pitching is so hard to come by right now. Young pitching, cost-control pitching is something that a lot of teams right now are craving, and the Giants do have that to offer when they enter the trade marketplace. So let's talk about those three groups of players who might be on the way out the door, who I think is likely to be on the way out the door, and then who the Giants could really consider trading if they're thinking about a blockbuster deal later on this offseason. So first episode after Christmas, let's get right into it. The first two players who I think are likely going to be traded this offseason. Remember, the Giants have a full 40-man roster right now. They just signed backup catcher Tom Murphy to play behind Patrick Bailey, who was an excellent rookie for the Giants this season. And with his arrival, with Blake Sabol on the 40-man roster and seemingly having a promising future in the organization, it seems as if Joey Bart's time in the Giants organization is coming to an end. And maybe it doesn't end at the beginning of spring training. Maybe it takes a catcher injury at some point for another team to compel them to deal for Joey Bart. But right now, it seems as if the number 2 pick in the 2018 draft is the most likely player on the Giants' 40-man roster to be traded this offseason. Things just never seem to work out for Joey Bart in San Francisco. You think about his development path to the big leagues. Obviously, he was viewed outside of the Giants organization by some people inside the organization as the heir apparent to Buster Posey, because that's what happens when you have a player who'd had the track record of longevity and success that Posey had in the Giants organization and had had it for so long by the time that they drafted Joey Bart with the number 2 overall pick back in 2018. People figured that Bart would eventually take over behind the plate, but that process was really supposed to unfold over 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. And then in 2020, Buster Posey decides to sit out the season amid the pandemic. He and his wife, Tristan, had just adopted the newborn twin girls. And so Joey Bart is on a 40-man roster that at the time includes Rob Brantley and Tyler Heineman, and the Giants were ill-equipped to handle the departure of Buster Posey that season. So without many other options, the Giants rushed Joey Bart to the big leagues. And I say rush, full well understanding that I was of the belief at the time that Joey Bart represented the best option inside the organization, because the Giants didn't do enough to insulate themselves after Buster Posey's opt-out decision. They didn't pull off a trade. They didn't make a late signing. They just didn't have the pieces in place to go out and figure out how they could handle the catching position in 2020. So Joey Bart's time at the major league level came earlier than anticipated. It obviously did not go well. The defense wasn't up to par in 2020 in the truncated season. The bat had a lot of strikeouts back then. And in 2021, Joey Bart went back to AAA and for the most part got the development that he needed. Buster Posey, of course, had the tremendous season as the Giants win 107 games, but he emptied the tank. And as he did so, and he retired after that season, it put Bart in the spotlight, and it was a spotlight that I think we can all acknowledge he was not quite ready to handle just yet in 2022. Whether he has the tools, the ability, still remains to be seen. I just think it's time for a change of scenery for Joey Bart. Things did not go the right way for him in the Giants organization. He was put into a difficult position, and it was made all the more difficult in 2023 by the fact that Patrick Bailey, who the Giants took with the 13th overall pick in the first round of the 2020 draft, was simply better this year. He was more prepared to handle this major league pitching staff. The bat popped when he first came up. That was important. Joey Bart falls behind Bailey, and that ultimately should have been the writing on the wall for him. And this addition of Tom Murphy, veteran catcher, platoon player, he'll probably play 30, 40 games behind the plate this season for the Giants, presuming he stays healthy. That means that Joey Bart is likely headed out the door and likely be a trade because he is out of minor league options. Now, could the Giants hang on to him in case Bailey or Murphy suffers an injury in spring training? That's absolutely the case. He could be a Giant and just auditioning for teams during Cactus League play. But I really think that for much of the rest of the offseason, the Giants will be listening to offers on Joey Bart, and they'll be considering dealing him. And now the other player in a very similar position to Joey Bart right now who the Giants could trade, Heliot Ramos, the first-round pick from the 2017 draft. And like Joey Bart, he was picked by a front office led by Bobby Evans and Brian Sabean that is no longer in power in San Francisco. And so what that means, these aren't the players who Farhan Zaidi and amateur scouting director Michael Holmes that they drafted. These are holdover players, and I really thought throughout the 2023 season, the Giants should have given Heliot Ramos more of an opportunity in the outfield. It was apparent that he just had some power and contact skills that maybe some of the other young outfielders, say a Wade Meckler or a Luis Matos, just didn't have. And so, yes, there's more swing and miss in Heliot Ramos's bat. He lacks the contact skills that Matos and Meckler may have, but there was more power. To me, there was more consistency this year. To me, he was more ready to handle major league pitching, and the Giants just didn't want to give him a bulk of the opportunities during the second half of the season. And so because his time is likely coming to an end in the Giants organization because he's been passed by so many people on the depth chart, I think it's probably fitting that he gets the change of scenery that Joey Bart will likely get this offseason, and he can go to an organization that can allocate the number of bats that he needs to be successful in 2023. So it's kind of the first group of players who I see as most likely to be traded this offseason, the former top prospects in Bart and Ramos, who just aren't viewed the same way in the organization right now because they're picked by a different front office and because they didn't have immediate major league success. And so while you're not trading them for top value like you could have in 2019, 2020, the Giants' 40-man roster is full. They're looking to make other additions, and in all likelihood, there are teams out there that would benefit from, at the very least, a platoon outfielder in Heliot Ramos, who I think can have success against left-handed pitching, and Joey Bart, who should be able to split time on another team behind the plate, potentially get the opportunities that he needs to finally have success at the major league level. So, next group of players I want to talk about, the young prospects who made their major league debut in 2023 who could be part of a deal if the Giants are looking to acquire, say, an impact starter who can help Logan Webb atop their rotation, who could be part of a deal for anyone, really, if the Giants are looking to acquire a proven veteran in the trade market right now, because these are players who can take on major league at-bats right away, who may need to go back to AAA for a little bit in 2023, but could go to organizations looking to rebuild, looking for, a little more cost efficiency, looking to slash payroll. These are the guys who I think the Giants could trade, and they include a Casey Schmidt, a Luis Matos, and a Wade Meckler. And I don't think it's likely that the Giants are pursuing trades involving any of those three players. But there's no question the Giants need to upgrade the top end of their roster and need to bring in proven veteran talent and the players who are going to be on the radar of other teams, especially if you're looking at, potential everyday pieces in your future lineup. Those three players, it's Schmidt, who can play both sides of the left side, both positions on the left side of the diamond. It's Matos, who can play all three outfield positions, and Meckler, who can play all three outfield positions. They're all taking up 40-man roster spots. They all have options and can be sent back and forth to AAA right now. I think that so many teams calling the San Francisco Giants looking for a deal would be interested in any member of that trio. And so if the Giants are taking a swing at the top end of the market, a deal for Dylan Cease of the Chicago White Sox, a deal for Corbin Burns and maybe Willie Adames with the Milwaukee Brewers, the conversation is likely going to need to include one of those players to entice the other team to make a deal, and it could need to include two of those players. And so I think that Casey Schmidt has a bright future in San Francisco. I could see him playing a major role for the 2024 team, especially if Marco Luciano isn't ready to take everyday reps at shortstop at the outset of the regular season. But there's a lot of swing and miss at that bat. He doesn't draw walks the way that the Giants, look, you can take issue with their organizational philosophy. You can say that Farhan Zaidi needs to change. I'm of the belief that they maybe do need to change a little bit but you can say that Casey Schmidt also doesn't necessarily fit the profile of exactly what they're looking for. However, if you want to get young and you want to get more athletic in the infield, if you want to have a good defense, Casey Schmidt absolutely fits that profile. So I think that would be a really tough ask if another team called on him in a trade. Meckler, Matos, a little more unproven at the major league level, didn't get nearly as many opportunities as Casey Schmidt in 2023, especially Meckler, and they're just a little bit more of question marks because I think they're both a year or two away from really knowing what they have at the major league level, because Meckler was a 2022 draft pick, kind of rushed to the majors in the Giants organization by virtue of his tremendous minor league success, but that didn't translate right away. And Matos, to me, just needs another year to get older. I think, 21, 22 years old this year. He'll put on some weight in the offseason. Strength and conditioning is going to be very important for him. The question is, does he have the glove to stick in center field, and will his bat develop power? And that could be a question that another organization wants to figure out on its own. So we've got the first bucket of players in the prospects that the Giants could deal who were former top prospects who no longer project as such in the major leagues. You've got the up-and-coming players who made their major league debuts in 2023 on the position player side. Now it's time to look at the up-and-coming pitchers who had a significant impact or have the potential to have a significant impact in 2024, and that is Keaton, Winn, and Tristan Beck. And you could throw Kyle Harrison's name into this group, and you could have thrown Marco Luciano's name into the last group. I just don't think the Giants are as likely to trade those two players. I did a whole episode of the Kerry show on whether the Giants might trade Luciano. I think it's more likely they'd deal him than Kyle Harrison, but nevertheless, I think they'd prefer to give up a Schmidt, a Matos, a Meckler on the pitching side instead of dealing Harrison. I think it's more likely that they would give up a Keaton, Winn, or a Tristan Beck, who both project as pitchers who could take down 100-plus innings in 2024. And for teams looking for cost-controlled starters to plug into the back of their rotations, I think they could do a whole lot worse than Keaton Winn, who, in my opinion, projects as a potential number 2 or number 3 if he really harnesses that splitter at the major league level. And Tristan Beck, who obviously showed that he could be a great swingman going back and forth from a rotation to the bullpen, taking on a variety of different roles. It was a really difficult, in my opinion, season for him because so much was asked of him and there was so little consistency in his role that I think a team could say, look, we just want this guy to start every fifth or sixth day and see what happens. And I think Tristan Beck would be the better for it. And I think that team that acquires him would be better for it as well. And so, again, if the Giants are shopping at the top of the market, looking at a pitcher to add to their rotation, I think that a lot of teams would love to replace pitchers with guys who are major league ready, which is why they will get calls on Keaton Winn and Tristan Beck. And I won't throw Mason Black into that mix yet. I won't throw Kai Tang into that mix yet because they haven't made their major league debuts, but expect the Giants to get calls on those prospects if they are trading for a pitcher at the major league level this offseason. Someone who, again, can pair at or near the top of the rotation with Logan Webb. And even if they're able to sign a Blake Snell or a Shota Imanaga, I still think the Giants should be pursuing pitching. If you've listened to any of the Kerry show this offseason, it is all about pitching and defense, getting more athletic. And that's why, making a trade involving a Keaton Winn or a Tristan Beck could be really hard for the Giants, but the other side of that deal would need to bring in an impact starter, and I do believe that conversations could progress if the Giants were willing to part with some of those pitchers who do have major league experience. So The last group of players that I think that the Giants may consider trading this offseason, and these are deals that I think they would probably jump at if they could. If anyone calls on one of their veteran players who is earning a high salary and the Giants may have to eat some of it to get them off the roster, say a Ross Stripling, an Anthony DeSclafani, maybe even a Michael Conforto, who really does project to have a very important role on the 2024 roster, the Giants might be willing to make those moves right now just because I think that they can backfill with their own talent, particularly in the rotation, better than Stripling and DeSclafani, and they might be willing to move on from Conforto if they can find another impact bat via trade, via signing, who projects to help this team more than a Conforto would if he slides into the Jock Peterson role next year. And again, he'll play some outfield, but you're not going to see the same version of Michael Conforto that you saw back in his heyday, back in 2019, when I think 30 home runs was a realistic projection for him. I don't see that for Michael Conforto right now, which is why the Giants might consider dealing him, and they probably would consider dealing a Stripling or DeSclafani if they got calls on those particular pitchers. So, to recap, guys who could be on their way out the door this offseason for the San Francisco Giants if the right trade materializes. And again, I think the Giants are going to have to be active in the trade market. I think they'll have to be aggressive, and they may have to give up players who they currently project as having big roles in 2024, 2025, and beyond to build a contender and to get this team in position to at least secure a wild card spot next season. It starts at the former top prospects, Joey Bart, Heliot Ramos, to me, the two most likely players to be dealt this offseason off of the 40-man roster. Then it's the young position players, and these are the guys who will be included in bigger deals who bring back premium talent. It's Casey Schmidt, it's Luis Matos, it's Wade Meckler, it's guys like that who have major league experience and could go to another organization and take down 400 bats this season if they're in the right scenario. And then it's the pitchers, and this would be a really difficult ask for the Giants. They've got to make sure if they're making a deal involving a Keaton Winn or a Tristan Beck that you're getting someone very good in return, because I think that those pitchers have value to the Giants already, and they could immediately plug in and take down more than 100 innings next season if they're on the right staff that can give them the right opportunity. So because the Giants have struggled to bring in high-profile free agents, and because this is an organization that fully intends on competing for a postseason berth in 2024, the Giants are going to have to hit the trade market, and they may have to make some deals that are initially unpopular, but if they ultimately make the 2024 roster better, you think about 2025 and 2026 down the road, because this is an organization that's losing fans, that's struggling to keep people engaged, that understands that it needs to put together a more compelling and more entertaining product. And one of the ways you do that is with sure bets and with guys who project to have value for you immediately when they step in the door. If you can't sign them through free agency, you've got to hit the trade market to find them. Thanks for watching another episode of the Kerry Crowley Show. If you like the show, subscribe, comment, drop your thoughts on guys who could be traded and who you would like to see the Giants acquire this offseason. Thanks so much for watching.